Welcome to the Filmography.
A world is a place to escape to, a place that encapsulates and projects all facets of the human condition. To create a world is to manifest every emotion outward, and the boundaries of doing so are limitless. Categorizing these grand universes is only to be done so that we may gain a full picture of the infinite possibilities world building holds in relation to storytelling. For in cinema we must always remember that the background is never just the background. This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/cinemacartography. That's mubi.com/cinemacartography for a whole month of great cinema for free. To make an era everlasting is to capture it and lock it within its own point in time. We do this not only to document a perspective on what a place once was, but more often to serve as a love letter, a means of artistic expression depicting one's deep appreciation for being able to be part of a story greater than oneself. To cinemize a place is a common endeavour, primarily for the fact that the place we're asked to witness is often the place that the film spawned from. Exploring the deep connections of memories and environment allows filmmakers to tell universal stories exclusive to a place and time. Woody Allen begins Manhattan with a voiceover, exploring what New York is, what it means, what it should be.
To him, no matter what the season was, this was still a town that existed in black and white and pulsated to the great tunes of George Gershwin. Now let me start this over. Chapter 1. He was too romantic about Manhattan, as he was about everything else.
We learn that in the eyes of many, what New York is still up for debate. It's never any of these things, while it's simultaneously all of those things at once. The opening of Manhattan renders the protagonist invisible. Rather than him, we're treated to static shots of Manhattan, high contrast spectacles reminiscent of street photography. We capture all facets of the city, from the richest to the poorest, night and day. But this is the film's main character. Shot in black and white, the city retains a permanence while the people inhabiting it are progressing through their daily routines.
Guys, we discussed this. I mean, it's difficult to live in this town without a big income.
Yeah, plus I got 2 alimonies, and I got child support, and I got to cut down. I'm gonna have to give up my apartment. I'm not gonna be able to do the tennis lessons. I'm not gonna...
As though the city is what exists beyond time. The setting is never the background. Shot by Gordon Willis, the utilization of light, space, and composition makes what is merely environment the catalyst for the story.
We were downstairs at the Castelli Gallery. We saw the photography exhibition. Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Really, you like that?
The photographs downstairs
Yes,
at the
downstairs.
Castelli Gallery. Great. Absolutely great.
The places that make New York, its museums, its restaurants, its streets, all the things which a person is able to take for granted and ignore, are never and can never be ignored by us.
So, you think I have no feelings, is that it?
You're so sensitive. Jesus, I never said that.
They are what the film is really about. They're shot with splendour, deep focused wide shots of larger areas, negative space enhancing the objects we see. For Manhattan plays itself, and it does so through the eyes of someone seeing it for the first time, and reminding all those that have seen it before of its eternal, everlasting beauty.
I think I better head back. I've got an appointment with Yale for lunch later on.
For to create a visual poem in and for a city is to create an equivalence of emotion for all those to whom it belongs and all those alien to it. Edward Yang is known for his ability at manifesting the purity of subdued filmmaking, managing to capture the totality of what is a Taiwanese identity. In Taipei's story, relationships between people and their environment are shown better than any other of his works. What is in one part a story about the uncertainty of a people's future is a story that marches in lockstep with the city of Taipei. The camera remains stationary at all times as we witness deep focus shots while characters discuss the woes and dreams that emerge throughout their lives.
这种事情会让你越来越相信命运。不管你多仔细，都会计算，一点点的偏差都可能造成致命的错误。
What we learn from Yang's camera work is that as the stories of people unfold in the foreground, we're able to see a simultaneous development occurring behind them. The characters of Taipei's story move in tandem with the world. The more we learn about its people, the deeper the anatomy of the city reveals itself.
挂啦！干你娘规路甲你放，你放规放无遮创啦！我请你啦哈！无啦，我过啦，使别人去啦。遮久无看啊，要斗讲着。
The city of Taipei is suspended between past and future. While our characters are often situated within crumbling and forgotten landscapes, they're as equally enveloped in the growing and technological advancements of the city. Yang reveals the city to us without context, and yet it's his own unique vision of what the city is that makes it so individual. He utilises a constant sense of pathos throughout the piece, regardless of which segment of society he's showing to us. With the slow reveal of places that are only made real due to a collective remembrance, shown appropriately through fragmented and languid light, to the impertinent cityscapes where we see traffic endlessly flowing, yet from a distance there appears to be a tranquil quality to it all, as though we're inevitably moving towards something while leaving something behind. This is the essence of the city of Taipei, a city in a dilemma, whose citizens can't decide on either micro or macrocosmic levels where they want to be. Taipei's story is a poignant take on one's love for a place, knowing that it can still be filled with dissatisfaction. The blurring of Western and Eastern ideals is heightened throughout the mise-en-scène, from dialogue to the clothing to the strict use of only diegetic sound. Yet what Yang manages to capture through his visionary aesthetic is that the heart of any place are those who occupy it, both moving toward the future together, unaware of where it may take them.
阿姊啊，你莫甲我讲迄美国人的规矩啦，咱是家己人咧，伊若无信心就算啦。我阿良做人做代志方式，你也毋知影啦。
Using a city as the main focal point of a film's narrative requires the story to inhabit the idiosyncrasies of a specific place and its people. Whereas films like Casablanca hinder on its incredibly tight screenplay and narrative, many other films of this kind can in many ways seem plotless. They serve as a means to show how an epoch exists, how a world within itself is the story. One prime example of this is Nashville by Robert Altman, a wildly ambitious film that takes the sheer scope of life in America and attempts to condense it all in a film of interlocking narratives, politics, and country music.
One, I love you. Two, I'm thinking of you. Three, I'll never let you go. And
Nashville is a film that serves as a messy, uncontrollable style of storytelling rather than the more contained approach of narrative cinema. Altman opted for something more fluid, incorporating documentary-style film techniques to ground the work in reality.
What is your name, honey?
Paul Harris.
Paul Harris. He's 13, he said. And what's your name, honey?
Overcutting dialogue, characters with no plots, and camera techniques that intervene within the world, reminding us that perhaps the camera is artificial, but the people are not.
She finally collapsed here on the sidewalk as sort of a faint. That's all we've been able to determine from Dr. Boland. At this moment, we interviewed Mr. Sperry. He said the same thing. Haven Hamilton said the same
All of this ensures that as viewers, we must step back and realize not to focus on the details of Nashville, but the entire piece that is Nashville itself. Here, Nashville, the location, is the backdrop. Robert Altman doesn't necessarily focus on the visual elements of the environment to display its character, but the richness and flexibility of the characters and their stories.
There's a reason he didn't take Tennessee, but he got 481,453 votes, and the asshole got 556,577 votes.
I just can tell, I mean, it's something that, it's the way she looks at me, it's the way, that feeling you get that that there's something else going on.
We feel so often that there's so much going on within Nashville that isn't captured. It truly feels like a world that is living. Many moments within Nashville serve as colossal showcases of humanity, how one simple event can cause a slew of perspectives, all of which we're privy to and observe.
Would make a light shine in their face.
Hey man, get on my car. Hey, don't lean on my car. Don't lean on me. I just got this goddamn thing fixed. So don't lean on it now.
Hey man, get the hell off my car.
We move from one person to another and back again, ensuring that the pace of such a vibrant world never ceases. The screenplay was written from the perspective of someone visiting Nashville as an outsider, and that's exactly what we are when we watch Nashville, a stranger within the world. Yet we're served so much of it, the emotions and sensibility of its people are truly demonstrated to us. And by the end, we learn that we can learn a bit more about the United States as long as we understand Nashville first. Jacques Tati exemplifies the notion of a film auteur as the absolute creative driving force behind a film. His vision is the film's totality, and in his magnum opus Playtime, rather than following a traditional narrative, we are told a story of incidents. Aside from Tati's character Monsieur Hulot, there are no main characters, rather dozens of people that move in and out of the emerging scenarios. For Playtime is a film about how Tati perceives the world around him, a modern world we're more than familiar with now, and how the change of the old world to the new can bring change within its people. A world of tall glass buildings, cityscapes of bustling people, and a consumerist mindset that seems too ridiculous to be serious is the basis of Playtime.
Attention, contact. Oh, that's what it's for. Yeah. You can see everything. Makes housework easier, Takes time. Make a wonderful gift for my maid.
And it was Tati's work in France as a mime artist that highlights the jovial and mischievous depictions of people with their environment. Tati's work need not be explained. You merely have to watch it to see the universal message Tati was able to implement by reframing how we look at the world that has enveloped us. Playtime is not a film where the setting is the character. The main character is the futility of how we interact with our settings. Monsieur Hulot is a stranger to this world, as though he's accidentally stumbled into it and continues to fall his way through it. Characters talk to one another, unaware that a glass wall separates them. Families are defined by their material items, oblivious to the fact that everyone else's lives are built exactly the same. The world is compartmentalized, as if to accommodate the people within it without realizing that they're more separate than ever. Communication breaks down, as well as the artifice of the world. All this before a literal collapse begins to occur. Playtime is a complete comedy, but one built upon sentimentality, for within the reflection of the glass doors and buildings, do we see the images of the real Paris, one that exists buried under the surface, only refracted in a mirror like a forgotten memory, or perhaps, as Tati shows us, with a reframed mindset, may be rediscovered as the identity of what this place truly is. Roberto Rossellini's War Trilogy utilises the real-life setting of the world post-Second World War as the studio for his film. After the Nazi occupation of Rome, the filmmaking industry was nearly completely destroyed due to economic and political turmoil. Yet Rossellini used this to create a film by any means necessary. Rossellini implemented the real strife of the world in his War Trilogy to paint a picture of how the world was and what its people were going through. Film itself was a precious resource to come by, and so illegally purchasing rolls of film and piecing different stocks together, Rossellini was able to create a neorealist masterpiece whose message exists within the very pores of the film. Light shines on decimated cities, rarely choosing to shoot settings inside the shadows, bearing the destroyed remnants for all to see. Rossellini wanted to show Rome for what it had become. It was not just something that occurred in the dead of night where no one could see. The very identity of Rome had been altered. Rome Open City created a new paradigm when it comes to the idea of location and place in film. Rossellini didn't need to change what was already there. The story was all around him. The story was the city itself. And the passions of telling stories about reality had now been made a possibility. The humanism that shines through in these works exemplifies the setting more than anything, for even in a place as torn as this, its true spirit will linger on those that endure.
Lodato Gesù Cristo.
Sempre sia lodato. Beh?
Sia lodato Gesù Cristo.
Sempre sia lodato, però tu sei sempre l'ultimo a lodarlo.
What a place truly is dependent on how we see it. Examining Dziga Vertov's self-reflexive documentary, Man with a Movie Camera, we discover a mode of film whose purpose was to cause a revelation in the mind of the viewer through the carefully constructed process of cinema that up to that point had been championed by Soviet theory. The use of handheld, the awareness of the camera, the mix of stage shots and real documentary shooting, all put together through a hyper montage, gave viewers an unachievable perspective of modern Russian life. To be able to dart through the streets, to watch a film of a film, to simultaneously see labourers as well as the products of their labour were all new visions at the time, only to be offered through the possibilities of cinema. It was the filmmaking process itself which was able to grant a newfound character within the world both inside and outside the lens of the camera. In accordance with the works of Rosellini, Man with a Movie Camera was not about trying to reveal the lost spirit of a place, but to awaken a dormant spirit that would elevate an already existing one. But sometimes the perspective of a place is focused on that which is unseen. Something like the Coen brothers' Fargo or Polanski's Chinatown offer a vision of the world wherein something has invaded what the place truly was and altered its very being.
For those of you who just joined us, Katie here this morning is going to show us how to make holidazzle eggs ourselves at home. Now, Katie, I got to admit, what? I was a little bit surprised when I first picked this up. Right. This is an empty egg.
Fargo is a crime story elevated by the fact that it's the least likely and least accommodating place for a crime narrative to take place. We focus on the wide, empty shots of snow-filled landscapes, where most people's major concern lies in staying warm.
So what's the deal now? Gary says triple homicide?
Yeah, looks pretty bad. 2 of them are over here.
Where is everybody?
Well, it's cold, Margie.
The inertia of people within the world make it nearly impossible for any progression to occur at all, as though both the people and the land have become frozen.
He says, oh, so I get it. So you think I'm some kind of jerk for asking, only you don't use the word jerk.
I understand.
Then he calls me a jerk, says last guy thought he's a jerk is dead now. So I don't say nothing. He says,
meanwhile, Jerry's story is one of a man out of control, emphasized by the composition, either showing him as an insignificant being or one where the bars are closing in on him.
Yeah, well, they exist, all right.
I'm sure they do. But I can't read the serial numbers here, so if you could read me some...
Yeah, but, see, I don't have them in front of me. Why don't I just fax you over a copy?
No faxes.
For the niceties in Fargo exist on the surface. You can see everything, so there's no need for a threat. Yet perhaps when the frost thaws, we may find that there was something beneath the pure white surface. As in Chinatown, we delve to a seedy underbelly of California, away from the endless sunshine. And what we find describes the city more than anything is the district of Chinatown. How such a small area that seemed to appear from nowhere could have such an effect, that a foreign entity so different to what was there before, seemingly only to operate at night, blinded by the neon lights and rules that only exist there. It's a perfect metaphor for the duality existing in the characters of this world.
Forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown.
And to truly witness that setting in cinema focuses on a battle for the soul of a city, we can avert our eyes to the Battle of Algiers. Where we not only achieve a sense of the physical space thanks to its filmmaking prowess, but it's this very space that people are fighting for. Based on the French occupation of Algeria, the film depicts the urban warfare that occurred in the capital between the French army and the Algerian resistance. The film uses handheld in a fantastic manner, mimicking the documentary styles of news footage. Cameras quickly pan and aim to get the best vantage point possible of events that violently explode in front of us. As though much of what occurs truly is spontaneous. And as the narrative is about a fight for who has rights to this world, we see a dichotomy as to what this world means to all people involved. Addressing the two warring factions allows director Gillo Pontecorvo to use different communication methods to depict differing perceptions of the world. The native Algerians know the world and progress through it with a degree of stability, even going as far as to have the world open up for them. Whereas the French soldiers are the invading force, out of their element. Their world then becomes layered, the streets are crooked, and the camera becomes involved in the action itself. Shooting in a telephoto lens during these situations evokes the nature that this is a documentary shown for the luxury of a Western audience. The fact that the camera points past the French soldiers towards the resistance demonstrates a subtle indicator of the bias depicting who the heroes of the story are supposed to be. The film aims to keep us at a safe distance at all times, yet this world doesn't belong to us. The identity that the film aims to keep continues to become destabilized, for the world is much stronger and only its people know this. On settings that exist purely in the memory of a child, we need look no further than Victor Erice's The Spirit of the Beehive. A tale told through the eyes of a child, we view the world with a naivete and oblivious concern as to the details of this world. We are given a refreshing perspective, as there are clearly strong matters of interest that unfold around us. However, none of them are comprehended nor elucidated upon, leaving us meandering through a world devoid of meaning. In The Spirit of the Beehive, we find two distinctive locations, the exterior and the home.
Luego se da jabón. Luego se da por la cara.
The home is a haven of memory. Shot in warm, honey-coloured tones, the house exudes the feeling of recollection, as though what we see is something remembered within a dream or reflected upon through a photograph. The house often has characters lit on pitch-black backgrounds, like paintings of old masters. And when each family member is seen, they are introduced in a new location, the mother at her desk, the father in his office, and none of these characters share a frame with anyone beyond our protagonist Anna. They exist solely in those worlds, for that is how Anna knows them. Their existence is based exclusively on how she envisions the sum of their worlds as a child. They never share a frame with other family members, for this is Anna's story, a reflective look on her childhood as she felt it. The spectral quality of The Spirit of the Beehive comes with this notion of memory. We never establish where or when we are. We move from one place to the next slowly and quietly, like moving through an endless corridor of doors. There's an immemorial quality to it all. In the land of dreams and memories, people are neither living nor dead, and the monsters that we imagined were all around us, in one way or another. And as we wander through these doors, sometimes they take us beyond the confines of the interior to the exterior. The outside locations of The Spirit of the Beehive display the antithesis to the home. There is nothing here, only the memorable landmarks that seem to have held some importance. Even if as a child we don't understand it, we distinctly remember it. A barren land makes everything visible, thus we can visibly see that around us there lies nothing. Yet perhaps it's this lack of something that strengthens one's sense of hope, for we would never miss something that could become visible on this empty plain. It's only after a futile exploration of the land do we realise that the land is as hollow as it appeared on the surface. All that is were the standalone landmarks that as a child were too mystifying to understand, but too imposing to realise that they weren't meaningless. For now, there is no depth here. It's been taken away, having something deeper simply imprinted on an empty earth. The notion of telling a story through the eyes of a child instantly fills our mind with ideas of memory and nostalgia. A child is yet to become the person they will be. In many ways, they're shapeless, formless. They don't adhere to the structures of a society that the adult world conforms to. Whereas adults can inhabit the time and place they exist, children emphasize that place by being incapable to fit inside its parameters. We witness this in Chihiro, entering the bathhouse in Spirited Away. She doesn't belong, nor does she feel like she belongs, calling for her parents and trying to find an understanding of her place in the world. She's alone in this place because in many ways, children are always alone in the place they are, even if they belong there. They are intrinsically outsiders, such as the character of Antoine Doinel in The 400 Blows. We're reminded from the very beginning of the film that this is a film about Paris. In our opening scene, we drive through the city streets and do not avert our gaze from the Eiffel Tower. Even when it fades from view behind buildings, we still await its triumphant reappearance. The people in the film are unapologetically Parisian, and Truffaut never ceases to utilise the real streets of Paris, shooting them from high angles, immersing us within the city streets. Watching the city lights illuminate through a travelling car window, we never forget where we are. The contrast is that for Antoine, all this is merely background noise. He never stops to analyse or question his surroundings. He's so different to everyone as a child, but much like many coming-of-age stories, we're watching the transition of what will make this child into the adult they shall become. At the end of the story, Antoine is lost, and it's no surprise that Truffaut utilises geography for one final storytelling device. As Antoine runs, the land runs out as he reaches the shore. On the precipice between land and water lies a boundary between what kind of life he shall pursue, and we're left unsure as to whether it's a border that can be crossed. The world through a child's point of view offers a long-forgotten perspective. Satyajit Ray's The Apu Trilogy utilises the life of a young child and channels his growth of his internal world to the expansion of the external. The first film of the trilogy, Patha Panchali, is set upon wide open pastures and a rural village in which only a handful of characters are interacted with. But by the final film, Apu has grown into a man, and rather than deal with the hardships of childhood, must forge his own path and accept his own responsibilities. He's no longer the blank canvas that lay ahead of him in Patha Panchali, for in Apu Sansar, we are amidst millions of other people in sprawling cityscapes, and we must confront others with who we are on a daily basis.
কতগুলো কথা জানানো দরকার। এই দুদিন সময় পাইনি।
And in Fellini's Amarcord, we witness the ability of nostalgia in effect, realizing that a place not only exists within our memory, but also on how we choose to remember them. The title itself is a play on word of an Italian dialect of the phrase, I remember. Fellini takes the village of his birthplace and reframes its existence within his own mind, becoming a carnivalesque dreamscape. The environment of Amarcord utilises the elements of romanticisation to evoke the fact that although this memory comes from Fellini's own sense of nostalgia for a place, it's not necessarily an autobiographical venture. The inhabitants of the town are complete caricatures. They are also able to express directly to the audience intimate facets of their own lives.
La nascita di questo paese si perde nella notte dei tempi. Nel museo comunale sulla piazza grande ci sono degli utensili di pietra che appartengono alla preistoria.
For what we learn with Amarcord is the power of memory. Fellini takes the conception of a small town from childhood, ruled under a fascist regime, and manages to find a whimsical nostalgia within it. It's clearly a film influenced by memory for the sheer scale in which the town presents itself. Every characteristic, every archetype, every conceivable setting and memory is splattered across the frame, as though Fellini wanted to reveal every drop of himself that existed within this town and present it through the only means he possibly could, by having the town itself inhabit those same characteristics. By cultivating a poetic gaze as seen in Amarcord, we learn that memory is an inescapable facet of life. We eventually have to turn to it, even if to garner some insight about the journey we have taken. And if for Fellini, the fascist regime he existed under was based on a premise that people believed, why should he not believe his own premise and what his life truly was? A circus attraction, fascism, and nostalgia, it appears, can walk hand in hand. Although you might never want to experience it again, some forgotten part of you will always miss it. But some worlds simply do not exist. They're refractions of our own ways of living, which although in many ways they're completely artificial, they can thus say more about our way of living than most others. Many of these worlds need to feel lived in. We need to feel as though there's a flow of life that runs through them, rather than just an empty imprint on a two-dimensional plane. Though not necessarily the look of a place that transmutes its depth to us, the design of such things most certainly can elevate what was merely concept to a higher level of emotional vitality. Blade Runner, for example, a hyper-futuristic version of Los Angeles, mixes the architecture of the city with Hong Kong and Tokyo and floods it with old tech. But much of the feeling of Blade Runner is told through its tactility. The filmmaking techniques of Blade Runner are what convey a world that breathes. Analysing the mise-en-scène, we see means of visually describing this depiction of Los Angeles with gusts of smoke. Much of the light is neon or hard, which when shone through the cascading rain results in a refracted and warped sense of light which can't be replicated.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
The entirety of Blade Runner's look is a masterclass in art direction and cinematography to celebrate the environment. Different textures and materials interplay with one another, right down to the clothing. so that when elements, fabrics, and lighting all mesh with one another, the result is something very real. And these are just the details of a grand and living world. But in other cases, a world is not a world at all. It's something completely other. Some self-contained universe where nothing can escape and everything that ever was exists solely in what we see. The Lighthouse by Robert Eggers is a realm assembled from the laying around archetypes of our subconscious. Two characters remaining on a segregated island, like the dueling nature of our persona and our self fighting in the sea of the unconscious. In the Lighthouse, the real becomes negligible due to precisely the unreality that the film's world is based in. Here, location and setting can be whatever the world requires it to be. The physicality of the lighthouse need not be a lighthouse, for in this world everything is substitutive as a symbol. The lighthouse can symbolize man's vanity in not only aiming to conquer the unconquerable in nature's powerful oceans, but his pride in never receding his masculinity towards another man.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you? Drunken in a Virginia fence. I seen it. You're fond of me lobster.
When we accept that the totality of a world and everything that we witness doesn't truly exist, apart from perhaps on a metaphysical plane, can we affirm what this world truly is and where we truly are? Cinema has been built upon symbols, and to truly celebrate that is to hand symbols back their power. Strange worlds are a cornerstone of cinema. Looking back all the way to the medium's infancy, you'll find that among the many uses that cinema adopted was to transport people to places they had never been before, or places that they had never even thought of before. Many of the earliest narrative films borrowed from the realm of theatre and even magic to convey the otherworldly nature that the world of cinema could display. And this sense of wonder amid cinematic worlds has continued ever since. Fritz Lang's Metropolis is a spectacle in every sense of the word. And opposing worlds which felt real and lived in, Lang conveyed his world with a sense of mythology and awe. The camera holds still and exhibits such worlds with astonishing power. The architecture looms over us. There's a sense of perfected composition within the world. Frames hold impeccable symmetry, or other compositional techniques are attributed, highlighting this world's heights of perfection. And though Lang aims to transport us to this world, he still wants this world to be one of the other. Again, many magical ethereal elements are at play here. Metropolis displays the city from the eyes of an inhabitant who is seeing the truth of what his city truly is. This allows a range of emotions to be conveyed through his perception of the city, which both subject and viewer are witnessing for the first time. Movement and scale play a large role in Metropolis. Endless crowds of people move in unison, and there's an efficiency to the world, as though it too moves in a rhythmic fashion. Much like the cinematography of the city, the story of Metropolis is told like that of a legend or a song. A story of anti-consumerist tendencies and anti-industrialized worlds, we find that the storytelling elements of Metropolis reach its crescendo when the rigidity and overwhelming power of its order comes crashing down, and the city and world finally reach its natural state of harmony. when all that was before is lost in a sea of fluid mise-en-scène. But what of those worlds that we cannot escape from? What of the worlds we are not sure where they are, or even what they are? Béla Tarr's magnum opus Satan Tango is an exercise in inertia. The film takes place in a completely isolated Hungarian village, yet the isolation here is not to be taken lightly. We are in a land in which there is no escape from. In Satan Tango, the world is felt as a powerful force. Rain endlessly cascades the land. The dirt and filth rise upwards. We combat the weather, the cold, the darkness. Yet perhaps the one thing that can never be defeated is the land itself. A land which is never ending. Satan Tango is a film over 7 hours in length, and it's this precise glaciation which is necessary for the film's storytelling. Throughout the film, we're greeted to the landscapes in which our story takes place. They seem overwhelming, yet at the same time, they entrance us. We're drawn into a world and are shown its absolute vastness. The land has shaped the people. For when we journey with them, we see their journeys entire.
Engem nem érdekel a doktor. Ha magának annyira hiányzik, akkor menjen vissza érte.
To live and exist in a place so brutal will alter a person, as it begins to alter the viewer itself. Truth unfolds in front of us slowly. We begin to learn that it's precisely this environment which is the cause for the constant suffocation this world brings. For the sheer length of the film within this setting becomes stagnant for the viewer. We watch as our fascination with the landscape turns into fear, as we're constantly reminded of its oppressing nature. Just like our characters, we too shall never escape this place. We'd like to thank Mubi for sponsoring this video. Mubi is a curated streaming service, an ever-changing collection of hand-picked films from new directors to award winners from everywhere on earth. Beautiful, interesting, incredible movies, and a new one every single day and always carefully chosen by Mubi curators. You can stream or download all of Mubi's movies anytime, on any screen, any device, anywhere, and you'll never see a single ad on Mubi. Mubi adds a new film to its ever-growing catalogue every single day. Right now, Mubi UK, you can watch The Terrorizers by Edward Yang, but you can find this and many films mentioned in our essays exclusively on Mubi. You can try Mubi for free for 30 days at mubi.com/cinemacartography for a whole month of great cinema for free.